Hi everyone, welcome back. Today is a very quick landscape and it's in my favorite color, indigo, just like normal. So you see here I'm laying down the first wash. Now this one, there was a lot of water in this mix. You can see that I'm going over and over again because I'm trying to get that water to soak in quite quickly. I wanted a lighter color because I knew I was going to have quite a dark foreground and the sky I wanted to be a little bit lighter. So I tried to let the water soak in as much as I could. You can see here that I'm just using a kitchen towel just to blot out some of the whites of the clouds. Now picking up more pigment, I'm dropping in, because that paper, even though I've blotted out that pigment and made it white underneath, the paper is still wet. So when I'm putting this extra color on, it's blending nicely. I've just wiped my brush off and now I'm going back in and trying to soften all the edges. It's easy for me to do because the paper underneath is still wet. So I'm not getting these very harsh lines, and because of the brush I'm using, it's also not dumping a lot of color on the page. So I know I have to work very quickly with this one, just from experience and knowing what the water content of the page is. If I'm going to get that very misty, fuzzy kind of feelings, I need to work very quickly and I need to control the amount of pigment that gets released onto the paper. You can see that as I am working with the page here, I'm constantly wiping my brush off. That's why I'm going off screen. So every time I pick something up off the page, I'm wiping that excess pigment off my brush and then going back in. So I've picked up something quite dark and you'll see as I put it across the page, it's going to feather quite, I won't say badly, it's quite a lot. And I was hoping to keep the bottom half of this picture very clean and white looking of the paper, but because the paper is so wet, that really dark pigment that I just picked up has just bled into that white section, which I'm not a big fan of. This is where I choose to take the trees, and you can see that without much effort, that pigment is feathering out very quickly. Now I'll go over this a few times because I want that intensity, I want that darkness, and I know the limits of indigo. I know when I put it down on the page, if I don't do more than a couple of layers, then I won't get that darkness and that intensity that I want. So you'll see me picking up the pigment that has bled down into what I want as the water section. Indigo pigment, it is a super staining pigment, but it's not a super staining pigment. It's quite good because you can get some very deep dark colors with indigo, but if you get it at the right time, you can lift it almost to a white. Not a pure white, but I like the residue that it leaves behind because it keeps the lighter parts of the painting kind of harmonious because it's still got that, like that hint of the blue pigment in there. The indigo that is my favorite, I've tried many, is Winsor & Newton. I just like their combination. I can't remember exactly, but I think it's PBK. It's a black pigment. It's definitely phthalo blue. And there's one other in there, I can't remember. But that combination of colour that they use to make their indigo pigment, I really like it. I have tried a few other brands and I just didn't like the colour as much. It's a personal preference. It's neither here or there. It's just something I like. So I think I will stick with the indigo from Winsor & Newton and not experiment too much with many other brands because I've done it and I'm not a big fan of the different colours that come out. It's only because they're mixing those three pigments together. If I wanted to, I could do that because I've got all of those single pigments in my watercolour palette, but I use it so much, I can't be bothered. So I'm not going to do that. So you'll see here, I've just been going back and forth, wiping my brush, picking up pigment, and then deciding where I'm going to put my lights and darks. From the camera angle here, it looks like they're just big blobs on the page right now. It's not the case. You'll see later on, I'll pop a picture up hopefully when it's finished, we'll see how we go, of what it looks like. It actually dries quite light, and then when I go over with darker pigment, it just fills in those extra little details. So it looks like a couple of blobs at the moment, and you can see down the bottom here that I'm losing that light section underneath, and I've got to keep going over and over again to lighten that section because I want that contrast. I want that reflection. I decided later on to put in the golden moon, which I normally do. And this is a really good example of what happens when you are familiar with your materials, you're familiar with your style, and you've kind of got the idea in your head. I had about 15 minutes before I needed to go to work. And I was like, I need to paint. I have this image in my head. I want to get it down on paper. I'm only going to use one color, which I did, besides the gold, so 2 colors, but 1 color for the actual picture. And I wanted it to look a certain way. And because I know my paper, I know my brush, I know the water content, I know my paint, I was able to get that image from my head onto the page. And also, I think it's practice. I know how the paint reacts in certain ways. So you'll see me now putting the gold on. This came together so quickly. They don't all come together that quickly, but that's okay. I just thought this was just a really nice example of when you practice every single day and you know your materials really well, then sometimes it just works. And it was the case with this, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out. It's actually one of my favorites. I put gold in the trees, which I never normally do, but everything just flowed. Everything went down the page like it was supposed to, and then I went to work and it was fine. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little voiceover as well. A few of you said that you liked this kind of format. I think it's great. So if you're happy following along and looking at some of these tutorials, I'm happy to keep making them. So thank you for joining me, and you'll see that I'll put the last little details on this, and then I'll pop a photo up at the end of what it ended up looking like. Thanks everyone.